Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Sitting in for Pinky Webb, I'm Ria Tanwatco Trillo. Today on the program, it's the Senator's turn to discuss the proposed Maharlika Investment Fund bill. But this early, lawmakers clash on which panel will handle the measure. A Senate resolution also seeks to probe Pagcor's third-party auditor. Senate Minority Leader Koko Pimentel joins us in the program. And later, the Migrant Workers Department is not keen on imposing an employment ban to Kuwait, even after the brutal killing of another Filipina in the Gulf state. Migrant Workers Under Secretary Bernard Olalia tells us more live. The controversial Maharlika Investment Fund bill stays under the Senate Committee on Banks. Majority of the lawmakers rejected the motion to refer the measure to the Government Corporations and Public Enterprises Committee. The Bank Committee's counterpart in the lower house was also the lead panel that tackled the bill. Let's go straight to the source of the story, Senate Minority Leader Koko Pimentel. Senator, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Ria, and to all of our viewers. Magandang umaga po.
Now, sir, senators have differed on which committee will handle the proposed Maharlika Investment Fund bill. You were pushing for it to be referred to the Committee on Government Corporations and Public Enterprises rather than the Committee on Banks, but in the end, you were outvoted. Do you still think that it's going to the wrong committee?
Yes, because as I've told my colleagues in the majority, the minority will always insist on following the rules. That's the initial step in examining a measure in the Senate. Before substance, we look at are we following the rules? So, in my interpretation of our rules, that committee is a committee on banks, financial institutions, and currencies. The measure, the Maharlika Fund bills, there are two bills now referred to the Senate House bill and the Senate bill. It does not create a bank. It does not create or recognize a currency. So is it a financial institution? A financial institution is like a bank, which we just cannot call a bank. So it's really a quasi-bank or other institutions performing banking functions which are not technically banks. So that's what you call financial institutions. So in my opinion, the Maharlika Investment Fund bill does not fall under the jurisdiction of this committee. But then we have another committee which is on government corporations. What is a government corporation? An entity which is either controlled by the government or has government investments. So definitely, the Maharlika Investment Fund creates a Maharlika Investment Corporation by law. It's created by law. And initial funding comes from government institutions. So that's a government corporation. So clearly. So
sir, ano yung maging implication, sir, if it goes to, if the bill lands with the wrong committee? What are the implications of this?
Well, it's no longer the wrong committee from the point of view of the Senate because the 19 of my colleagues voted to sustain the referral to the Committee on Banks. So that's it. That is now the decision of the Senate. I disagree. But then I cannot keep on disagreeing on that point because I have seen the vote. No, it was 19 votes in favor of referring it to the Committee on Banks. I believe this is a mistake, but then whether it is right or wrong, correct or wrong, it is a majority decision, Ria.
Will this change the way that the bill will be debated on the floor now that it's with this committee?
Well, the leader or the sponsor will change. If my motion was granted or if my motion prevailed, then the point man for this measure would be the chairman of the Committee on Government Corporations. So he will now set the hearings, he will invite the resource persons, and he will take the lead in writing the committee report. or amending the measure or the bill before the committee. So mag-iiba because it will be a different personality.
All right, sir. So now it is with the Committee on Banks. Now, on the part of the president, he has told senators to study the bill. Do you feel that this might be an indication that he's giving the senators a free hand to do what they want with this bill?
We should interpret that statement that way. That there should be no pressure on senators to hurry this Maharlika Fund measure. We should really study this up to its minutest detail, not only from the concept, the name of the corporation, the structure, the funding source, but even up to the way these ideas are expressed in the law. Even the sentences, the words chosen, where the comma is, the semicolon is, the period is, yan. As minute as that, as detailed as that area.
Now, sir, do you expect this bill to pass swiftly in the Senate? Simply because we know that this is priority legislation for the president. It's his family that proposed it in the lower house, and he had a soft launch of it when he was in Switzerland. Do you think it'll pass quickly, or will the Senate really take more time to study it?
The minority is willing to take the time to study this measure, and I'm just hoping that also the majority. I hope they take into consideration that latest statement from the president that President Marcos is in fact asking the Senate to study very carefully the Maharlika bill. Because some can use the certification of urgency coming from the office of the president. So actually there are two signals now, but that is the latest statement from the president that the Senate should study the Maharlika bill very well. So that is also my appeal to my colleagues in the majority.
Now, Senator, what is your reaction regarding the changes made to the House version of the bill, even after it had already passed third and final reading?
I think these are not official changes because the House version transmitted to the Senate was still the third and final version of the House, not the re-engineered version discussed in media or through media by Congressman Salceda. So those are maybe his ideas, but not officially incorporated into the bill. So the Senate, maybe in the interpellations or during the committee hearing, a member of the Senate or a resource person can bring up those new ideas, but they're not automatically reflected on the measure transmitted by the House to the Senate.
I see, sir. But regarding this re-engineering and changing of some details, do you feel that this might indicate that the bill was not well thought of in the first place?
Yes. Yeah, even without the re-engineering, even going over the third and final reading, it's not a well thought out bill, not a well written bill. And actually, the third and final reading version is also very different from the initially filed version or versions. So we have here an indication that there is some confusion. For the president to certify a bill as urgent and then for him to appeal to the Senate or to hint to the Senate that you could study this very well, take your time. We see that there is really some confusion here because I do not think that the proponents, the backers are talking at the same wavelength or at the same level. So some are actually discussing this topic conceptually. Some are already discussing it in the details, and in the details they differ. And even in the concept, because this started as a sovereign wealth fund, and now it became an investment fund. And then in the re-engineering concept, it becomes a special purpose vehicle. In my opinion, that's my analysis of what is happening. So everyone is confused.
Well, speaking of all these changes, among them is the removal of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas as a funding source of the fund and instead getting funds through an IPO. What are your thoughts on this, Senator?
Then all the more we are veering away from the concept of a sovereign wealth fund. This now becomes a private wealth generation fund. Ganun na po yun eh. When in effect we are attracting those with money to invest so that this corporation which is to be put up by law or through law will make riskier investments, gamble with your money, and then if they succeed, you hit the jackpot. You will partake or join in the distribution of the benefits. And these are private people. So malayong-malayo na po sa sovereign wealth fund. Sovereign wealth fund is this present generation has a surplus, a windfall or a bonanza or hit the jackpot. Again natin sa quotation marks yun. That's why this present generation knows that it cannot dissipate the said windfall, the said surplus, because this present generation wants to take care and share the benefits of such windfall or surplus to the future generations. That is the basic essence of a sovereign wealth fund. So that fund is in the name of the people, run by the people or for the people. So ganoon po yun. But pag participate ka na sa stock market through an IPO, you're like a private corporation, this time for profit of the present investors. So malayong-malayo na. Magkakagulo po tayo rito.
All right, Senator, we need to take a short break, but do stay with us. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I'm Ria Tanwatco Trillo. Our source today is Senate Minority Leader Koko Pimentel. Sir, still on the Maharlika Investment Fund, do you feel that because of all these changes we were speaking about before the break and the many iterations of this bill, should the lower house recall its version or just leave it as is?
Well, that's their call, no? That's their decision, Ria. But the Senate is already in possession of the House version they transmitted. So, should they decide to recall, they just inform the Senate. But the wheels of our system, our procedure will now have to continue. We will process the measure because it has been transmitted to us, and a counterpart bill has been filed also.
All right. Now, Senator, do you personally feel the urgency to pass the Maharlika Investment Fund? And why do you think it is that other lawmakers seem to be in a hurry to pass it?
That I do not understand. Why the rush? We don't even have a surplus. We don't even have a new source of income or new source of wealth. So why the rush? Because uso daw eh. So hindi naman tayo dapat makiuso. Kung uso yan sa ibang bansa na mayroong budget surplus, wala po tayong budget surplus. So this measure is not justified at all at this moment. The concept has not been fixed by the proponents are very confused. So therefore, we can do better things with the time of the Senate. We should spend the time of the Senate on measures which seek to increase agricultural productivity. Yeah. Maybe address inflation, maybe supervise Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, ask them what they have been doing to contain inflation. Housing, energy, yan na lang po, instead of eating up the time of the Senate debating something which is not justified. In the end, if this measure passes, becomes law, what will happen? Since we don't have a surplus, we don't have a new source of income or generation of wealth for the nation, how will we fund this investment fund? Mangungutang. So this will all lead to additional debt for each and every Filipino. So baka dumoble pa yung utang po natin per head.
Sana naman hindi, Senator. All right, let's move on to the issue of POGOs and Pagcor. Senators question the contract of Pagcor with a third-party auditor, Global Commerce C. You want this to be probed. What exactly do you want to look into? What exactly do you want to find out?
For the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee to investigate this transaction in detail, even go back to the negotiation stage. How come Pagcor chose this entity? How was Pagcor convinced that this is the best entity to audit POGO operations? So yun po yun. And then of course, we already know the financial angle of the transaction. It is 6 billion pesos in 10 years, so 600 million a year. That means 50 million pesos a month ang binabayad po, pumayag ang Pagcor to pay this third-party auditor. And then the Senate Blue Ribbon will have to investigate who are these auditors? How competent are these people?
Sabi naman, sir, ni Pagcor Chief Altenco, he told us, CNN Philippines, that the contract with the third-party auditor is still under review and that they've actually not paid anything because they found out that the auditors were not able to deliver. Your thoughts on that?
Well, that makes the situation worse for the previous administration of Pagcor, which entered into the said contract. Yun po yun eh. So, and then we'll have to double check that statement that nothing has been paid. And then, kasi there's also information that this auditor, which imagine, just mga kababayan, just imagine an auditor, no, an auditing office being paid or agreed to be paid, let's say 50 million pesos a month, and yet yung opisina niya pabago-bago. So ano ito? What are we dealing with? Are we dealing with an established, reputable entity? Are we dealing with a small entity? Are we dealing with a fly-by-night entity? And how come the professional fees would amount to 50 million pesos a month? So let us say hindi nabayaran or hindi nag-release ang new Pagcor leadership. Question is, why did the previous or the old Pagcor leadership enter into such a contract?
Right, still so many unanswered questions. All right, thank you very much, Senate Minority Leader Koko Pimentel, for spending your morning with us. And we will be taking a short break. This is A Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned.